You guys remember WCPW? That was a weird old time in my life, taking a powerbomb through a table, called by Jim Ross before Rampage Brown ripped off my trousers and threw them so they landed on Jim Cornette. What a weird and completely factual sentence. So, a short while into WCPW's life, while Joseph Connors was our champion, NXT UK was announced and a bunch of wrestlers who regularly featured on our shows were offered contracts. Obviously they took them, bloody hell who wouldn't, but those contracts precluded them from working in certain other UK promotions like, you guessed it, WCPW. Bang, there goes a significant part of our roster. Some could consider it a targeted attack if you're feeling particularly tinfoil hatty, but it did get me thinking, where else has WWE either intentionally or accidentally exerted its veiny, sweaty influence to crush another promotion into the dust? I'm Adam, hailing from partsFUNknown here at 10 Wrestling Companies WWE Destroyed. And if you would like this particular wrestling-based company to not be destroyed, you can help us out by subscribing to partsFUNknown. It is way more important than you think. It really helps us out, and it's free. So click on the button and the bell. It helps. Number 10, World of Sport. Did WWE launch NXT UK to try and kill WCPW? No, they didn't. We'd like to think that we were the little promotion that could, puffing out our chests and stepping to the big dog, but no, I don't think WWE really cared about our YouTuber-heavy indie fed. Did WWE launch NXT UK to try and kill the 2016 reboot of World of Sport, the iconic UK wrestling platform that ran for 20 years from the mid-60s to the mid-80s and made household names out of Big Daddy, Giant Haystacks, and others? Yeah, that's probably quite more likely. The British wrestling scene was on fire in the mid-2010s as a result of promotions like Progress, ICW, Rev Pro, and the like. Could ITV have successfully capitalized on that to relaunch World of Sport as an enduring brand? Possibly. ITV's generally a bit shit, so it's not a dead cert, but it certainly didn't help when WWE descended and signed half of BritRes to exclusive contracts that prevented them from working with companies like, I don't know, World of Sport. Still, thank goodness everyone watches NXT UK and it was absolutely worth cannibalizing the British wrestling scene for. Number 9, AWA. Let's head a bit further back in time now to the 80s, widely regarded as one of wrestling's finest end-to-end decades. The 1980s, with the advent of pay-per-view and advances in nationally syndicated television, saw a monumental shift in the wrestling scene with some of the more drastic changes, a direct result of the actions of Vince McMahon and WWE. The US was carved up into territories at the time, each with their main event talent, and it was an unofficial agreement that territories would not poach other promotions' top stars. Vince planted his grapefruits directly on that unwritten rule and raided all the territories, luring away their main event scenes and flooding his mid-card with some of the best characters in the industry at the time. But few companies suffered more than the American Wrestling Association, the AWA, with WWE stealing away AWA's most valuable star, Hulk Hogan. Now, to be fair to Vince, AWA made that defection very easily by repeatedly getting cold feet about putting their big belt on Hogan. Vince had no such qualms. Following Hogan's departure, the AWA never fully recovered, even if it did limp on for another decade. Number 8, Georgia Championship Wrestling. In 1984, Georgia Championship Wrestling was 40 years old, was one of the jewels in the National Wrestling Alliance's big bulging crown, being the first NWA-affiliated promotion to air a wrestling show on national TV. Vince saw this national TV slot and thought, yummy, yummy, in my tummy. Jack and Jerry Briscoe sold their shares in Georgia Championship Wrestling to Vince McMahon in 1984 in exchange for nearly $1 million dues and jobs in the WWE for life. Co-owner Ole Anderson did not know about this and was very unhappy, but Ole Anderson would be very unhappy seeing a newborn corgi smiling at him. The sale of GCW included the promotion's coveted time slots, which Vince used to create WWF World Championship Wrestling. Mad as that sounds looking back. That show would promote other WWE shows and recap WWE matches, much to the chagrin of the Southern audience, who turned away from the show in droves. Ric Flair said in his book that an unnamed source offered the Road Warriors $5,000 to injure the Briscoes in revenge for their part in crippling GCW, but apparently Road Warriors refused to do it. What a friendly pair of post-apocalyptic murder bastards. Number 7, Evolve. Evolve was an all-you-can-eat indie superfed buffet, providing a one-stop shop for all your favorites from ROH, Dragon Gate USA, and PWG, putting on excellent wrestling from 2010 to 2020, at least for fans who even knew it existed. Independent wrestling was a difficult business to be in at the start of the 2010s, as there had yet to be the resurgence of interest and the increase in accessibility that would come later on. In 2015, at the height of Indie Mania, Evolve entered into a relationship with WWE. In exchange for access to their video library, WWE and NXT talent would occasionally appear on Evolve shows from time to time, and Evolve show was even put on the WWE Network to go head-to-head with AEW's Fight for the Fallen in 2019, before WWE would purchase Evolve outright in 2020. The details of Evolve's final days have always been a bit murky, but whether WWE simply put the promotion promotion out of its misery or decide to throw money at one of the indie scene's most recognizable promotions to make it go away. The only place you'll see Evolve now is on the WWE Network, and even then, you've got to dig for it. Number 6, Stampede Wrestling. Stampede Wrestling was one of the biggest wrestling promotions in the history of the Great White North, built on the passion, technical wizardry, and stony-faced semi-annoyance intrinsic to the Hart family. Then came the mid-80s, and Vince going all supermarket sweep on the territories, grabbing whatever he could to cram into his trolley before Dale Winton told him to stop. These are some deep UK TV references. In 1984, Stampede was in a bad way, having been shut down for 6 months following an infamous riot at one of their shows. Hart sold Stampede to McMahon in 84, and Vince took with him Dynamite Kid, Davey Boy Smith, and a little-known youngster named Bret Hart for his roster. The territory was supposed to be sold for a cool $1 million, but after only a fraction of it was paid, Vince McMahon said he couldn't honor the agreement and Stu was free to start up again if he so chose, even though Vince had already snaffled all the top stars of the territory. They would relaunch with the likes of Owen Hart, Chris Benoit, and Brian Pillman, but would only last a few years before folding again due to strained relationships and a poor economy. Vince, you ruthless bastard. Number 5, the USWA, the spiritual successor to World-Class Championship Wrestling from Texas, aka the once white-hot home of the Von Erichs. The United States Wrestling Association never truly captured the magic of its predecessor. In the early 90s, the company actually had a talent exchange with the WWF, which ended up seeing Jerry Lawler and others make appearances for the company. Fun fact, at one point, Papa Shango was the USWA Unified World Champion. What a prestigious world championship that is. However, what ultimately led to the death of the promotion was the fact that it held all of its marquee live shows on Monday nights, and guess which day of the week suddenly became very important in the mid-90s. The Monday Night Wars saw a big drop-off in the number of people willing to venture beyond their couch for their weekly wrestling. WWE and WCW's control of the airwaves slowly strangled the USWA, and on October 3rd, 1996, the company drew the smallest crowd in Memphis wrestling history, a mere 372 people, and the company called it quits shortly after. Number 4, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. You could argue that Smoky Mountain Wrestling never really stood a chance. As old school can get, Smoky Mountain Wrestling was founded by professional cloud yeller Jim Cornette to be good old southern grappling, mustache-twirling villains, earnest babyfaces, down-to-earth gimmicks, and people really caring about the rules. Unfortunately, he founded it in the 90s when people cared about edgy content, anti-heroes, and Limp Bizkit in that order. Also, it was founded in the first half of the 90s, shortly after the wrestling boom died. People super didn't care about wrestling anymore. Despite forming working relationships with both big dogs on the scene, swapping talent with both WCW and WWE, Smoky Mountain could never get a foothold on television. Without a reliable weekly time slot, the promotion limped on before WWE dealt the official killing blow, signing Cornette to work for them full-time, leading to him shuttering the promotion for good. Number 3, Jim Crockett Promotions, aka Vince McMahon's biggest rival of the 80s. The promotion built around Ric Flair, the hottest wrestling star in the world whose name was not Hulk Hogan. And oh, the lengths that Big Vince would go in order to sabotage JCP. It's truly sensational, Mean Girls levels of psychological torment. In addition to his signature move, poaching talent away from the company with the promise of bigger paydays, Vince scheduled the first ever Survivor Series to run against Starrcade, JCP's biggest card of the year, scheduled the first ever Royal Rumble to go head-to-head with Bunkhouse Stampede, and even strong-arm pay-per-view providers telling them that if they ran shows like Starrcade, they would lose the rights to run WrestleMania 4. Believe it or not, many of them chose WrestleMania 4. JCP could not compete with this frantic Stanford dick swinging, and by the end of 1988, they were on the verge of bankruptcy, forcing the company to be sold to a certain famous billionaire, and believe it or not, we might come back to him later. Number 2, ECW. Do you remember ECW? It was shot in a car park and the wrestlers hit each other with bin lids and said piss and dick and that. It was a game changer. I'm a sarcastic arsehole, but the truth is there are fewer promotions that ever felt more relevant or of its time than ECW in the mid to late 90s. However, the problem with being a trendsetter and introducing the Western market to some of the best wrestlers and talkers of their generation was that people with more money would come along and steal those trends for their TV shows. Such was the life for ECW. They'd generate the world's best roster. It would be raided by WCW or WWE. They would have to scramble to find more, locked in third place and struggling to stay on TV. ECW was being broadcast on TNN in 2000, and after an incredibly fractious relationship with the network, ECW was pulled off the air to be replaced by none other than WWF Raw. Without the added revenue from television, they were unable to stay afloat and declare bankruptcy officially in April 2001. And to Paul Heyman's credit, he waited 90 days after the company was closed to declare bankruptcy, so the banks could not recollect any of the payouts given to the wrestlers for the last shows. Nice little fact about Paul floating in a sea of bounce check stories. And number 1, NXT 1.0. I'm just kidding, but also not really, to be honest. But anyway, number 1, WCW. Having a boot on your throat will do that to you, huh? For 6 straight years, WWE had one goal: beat World Championship Wrestling, a feat it initially failed quite spectacularly at when the NWO briefly took over the entirety of global wrestling, helping to jumpstart the second wrestling boom. Eventually, WWE pulled ahead, owing to a combination of, yes, Vince and Austin, but also WCW repeatedly shooting themselves in both feet with sawn-off shotguns, burning huge piles of money every single year on fat contracts for uncooperative stars, holding pay-per-views like Hog Wild where the fans attended for free, generating $0 on the gate, rock concerts, dueling monster trucks, and other very silly things. Despite making insane amounts of money in 1997, the show's decline in quality, made worse when Vince Russo and his frenetic car crash style moved over from WWF in a move so detrimental it could almost be seen as intentional sabotage, soon saw the company losing millions of dollars every single year as WWE took strides towards total market dominance. Shortly after the decision was taken to remove WCW from TV, WWE purchased the company, leading to the infamous Vince promo about the fate of WCW being in his hands. One more smoking ruin for the pile. And that's our list. Of all the defunct promotions in wrestling history, which do you miss the most? Let us know which one and why in the comments. Don't forget to like and share this video around if you enjoyed it, and make sure you subscribe to partsFUNknown for more silly wrestling content. Jam that jam.